Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Iowa State University and the Memorial Union. On behalf of the university and the Student Disability Resources Office, Equal Opportunity and Diversity, we'd like to welcome you to tonight's guest speaker. Karen Kenninger and Shoshana will be sharing with us some really valuable information concerning Iowa Department for the Blind. But first, a couple of housekeeping matters. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off right now. As well, there will be opportunity for questions and answers after the discussion. Okay? My name is Stephen Moats, and I'm the Director of Student Disability Resources here at Iowa State. Again, I'd like to welcome you. I'm also the Assistant Advisor for the Alliance for Student Disability Resources and Alliance for Disability Awareness here at Iowa State. We'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming out if you're here for class credit tonight. Francesca Galarraga is the Associate Director of Equal Opportunity and Diversity. She will introduce our speaker tonight and share some more information with you. Francesca?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Like Steve said, my name is Francesca Galarraga, and I am the Assistant Director for Equal Opportunity and Diversity, and I'm also the Chair for the University Committee on Disabilities. And the University Committee on Disabilities is a cross-functional team, and we're responsible for increasing the awareness of people with disabilities, and we're also advocates for finding ways to meet those needs. I have the great pleasure tonight of introducing Ms. Kenninger. Ms. Kenninger was born and raised in Vinton, Iowa, and is the third of 7 children. When she was 16 months old, her parents discovered she could not see very well. She was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosus, a progressive degenerative disease of the retina. By the age of 20, she was completely blind. After attending the Iowa Braille and Sight-Saving School in Vinton, Ms. Kenninger went on to obtain a bachelor's degree in journalism from Drake University. She became a full-time homemaker and a proud mother of 6. She established a freelance writing service and then continued on to a master's degree in English with an emphasis in business and technology writing from right here at Iowa State. If you're not tired yet, in 1995, she accepted the position of rehabilitation consultant with the Iowa Department for the Blind. In 2000, she was promoted to program administrator for the Iowa Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. She was then appointed to her current position of director of the Iowa Department for the Blind by the Iowa Commission for the Blind. Please join me in welcoming Karen Kenninger. Thanks, Karen.
Goodness, I'm tired. Well, it is delightful to be here tonight. I'd like to introduce a couple of other people before I get started on my presentation. The first is Shoshana Hebschi. Shoshana will be running my PowerPoint and other audiovisual aids, whatever. So welcome, Shoshana. She is the communications specialist for the Iowa Department for the Blind. She's been with us since last August, and she's doing a fantastic job. The other one that I would introduce to you is Corbin. Corbin is on the floor over there. Hopefully he'll stay there. He is my seeing eye dog. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. I have, as Francesca said, been blind since I was a small child. I never had enough vision to do anything visual particularly. I could read large print when I was in kindergarten, but by first grade I was not even able to do that, and it has been a progressive loss ever since. My children and my grandchildren have known me as an adult, and therefore I've been blind for the time that I have known my children and my grandchildren. But one Christmas I was at my daughter's house, and her son was about 5, and he was wanting to show me some pictures. And he had been coloring in kindergarten, and he was very, very proud of these pictures that he had drawn, and he brought them to me, and he said, Nana, look at my pictures. And I said, oh, Jacob, honey, I can't see your pictures. Can you tell me about them? No, look at my pictures. Jacob, tell me about your pictures. Just a minute, he said. And he ran away, and he came back dragging my dog. And he stood the dog in front of me. He had been told that this was Nana's seeing eye dog and that this dog helped Nana see. So he stood the dog up there, and he said, now you can see my pictures. I think it is very difficult for children to understand what it means not to be able to see. It's so contrary to everything that they have experienced that it's impossible, really, for a 5-year-old to comprehend what it means. And in fact, human beings as a race have developed over tens and hundreds of thousands of years with vision as our primary way of dealing with the environment. Now, that's not necessarily true with all animals. Corbin over there, he can take in the whole world with his nose. A bat can catch millions of mosquitoes without seeing any one of them. Fish can find their prey with electromagnetic or bioelectrical signals that they can sense, and birds are said to follow magnetic fields as they migrate. But people, human beings, developed vision as our primary method of getting the world in. And 90% of the information that we gather from the world around us is generally visual. That's why I think it's very difficult to imagine, if you've never had a vision loss, what it's like not to be able to see. We don't have those techniques that other animals have. Corbin can smell 100 times better than I can. I'm not real good on bioelectricity, not real good on magnetic fields. Don't have the hearing of a bat. And because we don't have those senses, and vision is what we have always done, from where we came from as cave people, if you couldn't see, you would die. Back in the day when you had to worry about tigers and mastodons and things like that, vision was what kept you alive. And that's why we are so deeply wired to see that it's impossible to even think about how we would function if we couldn't. It's so deep in our genetics and in our instincts and our bones. And yet, today, in the world that we live in, it's not true that if you can't see, you would die. And in fact, for some of us, it's actually okay to be blind. Now, I don't mean that's preferred, but it's not the life-ending experience that it might once have been. And I believe that with the proper training and proper opportunity, any person in this room or outside of it could actually adapt to blindness and continue to live a full and productive and happy life at home, at work, and everywhere else you want to go. Well, you say, yeah, we'd like to believe that, and we've seen some evidence, but, it's really hard to understand, and really we think you're kidding yourself. I couldn't do that. I mean, not to be able to see and to get along, how could that be? I don't think that if you haven't experienced it, you can imagine it. I really don't. But I'd like to take you on a little journey that I think you can imagine, and I think it has some relevance to what we're talking about here. So, if you'll go with me here, take a deep breath. Here we go. The sunroom is gone. Instead, you find yourself standing in the middle of an Inuit village somewhere north of the Arctic Circle. Now, it's even colder than here. Because even though your inner clock says that it's noon or it's dark, there's a little bit of gray in the sky, and it's really, really cold. We've had a lousy winter here, but up there, it's 60 below. You're wearing the same clothes that you put on this morning. You don't know where you are. You don't know how you got there. But what you do know is that if you don't get some help pretty soon, you're not going to last very long. You look around and you see the outlines of some buildings, perhaps in the gloom. And a person comes out of one of those places. She takes you by the hand and she leads you to the entrance. She says something in a language that's very strange. You don't understand it. Then she realizes you don't understand it, so she pantomimes what she wants you to do. She wants you to come in. So you duck into this building and you are relieved to see that there's a fire burning in the middle of the floor. This is not what you are used to at home. And the place is very smoky. It makes you cough. But it's warmer than it was outside. And she puts a fur blanket around your shoulders. You're grateful for the warmth, but boy, does it smell bad. And then she hands you a chunk of some white stuff and indicates that you ought to eat it. You can't. Your stomach revolts at the very sight of this stuff, which you have a sneaking suspicion is seal blubber. And then she offers you something to drink. That doesn't appeal to you either. You have absolutely no idea what it is. So you huddle there on the floor with that blanket wrapped around your shoulders. And you kind of get used to the smell of the seal skin. It is keeping you warm after all. And you wait for rescue. You know it'll come. I mean, how could it not? People don't live in these places anymore. The people who are there try to communicate with you, but you're not interested at first in learning their language. You're going home. You're really not a very pleasant guest either, because you just keep looking for rescue. And they take care of you. They feed you various unspeakable things in hopes that something will appeal to you. Nothing does, but eventually you get hungry enough to eat. And they let you sit there by the fire, and they let you stay close to it because they seem to understand that you don't do cold very well. Weeks, maybe months pass, and still you hope. Where's that rescue plane? You hear it in your dreams, and sometimes you think you hear it when you're awake. And every time you think you hear it, you run outside and you look up, and the sky is empty. The disappointment nearly kills you every time that it happens. Eventually, though, you have to admit that you're never going home. So now what? You don't know how to speak their language. You're not good at eating their food. You don't know how to hunt seals or manage a dog team. You don't know how to dry the meat. You don't know how to make a blanket. You don't really even know how to walk on the snow and ice that's all over the place. You're afraid to go outside. It's really cold. And besides, the children kind of giggle every time you do something because you're really clumsy. Now, it's not that you are fundamentally different in this place than you were at home. You still like chocolate. You still believe in honesty and liberty and friendship. You still know how to balance your checkbook, if you ever did. You still know how to solve a problem, manage a project, teach a skill. Nothing inside you has changed. But you're never going home. The fates have landed you here for good. And eventually, you realize that you have some very hard choices to make. You can sit by this fire and eat their food for the rest of your life. Their culture says that they have to let you because you're their guest. Or you can learn to live and work the way they do. They want to teach you the difference between old ice and new ice. They'd be happy to show you how to handle a spear or build a fire, how to lay up food or manage a dog team. They're willing to teach you their language and their customs. You may never speak without an accent, and you may never enjoy skinning a seal. But what will you do? Will you take the opportunities that the natives offer you to learn here and regain your own self and independence? Or will you sit by the fire for the rest of your life? What would you do? Blindness and adapting to it isn't much different than that. It requires a new way of gathering information. Can't see it. Got to find some other way to get it. Requires a new way of doing everyday things. I can't do them visually. I've got to find some other way of doing it. But it does not fundamentally change the human being inside. If you decide to learn these things, you have people to teach you and people who will support and encourage you in learning how to do things in a new way. In our modern society, which is far away from the bears and the wolves and the man-eating tigers of yesterday, I believe that you too could adapt to blindness and you could thrive. Now, you aren't likely to lose your vision, so you're never going to have to probably go there. But the chances are that you will meet one of the 69,000 Iowans who deal with vision loss, because they're your neighbors, they're your co-workers, they might be a relative or the friend of a friend. And when you come across these people, think about what you would do and realize that if you can adapt to something this different, there's no reason they couldn't either, as long as they have someone to teach them and the people around them support them in the change. Now, as Francesca said, I'm the director of the Iowa Department for the Blind, which is a state agency. And that state agency is dedicated to this very process of teaching people how to adapt to blindness and then helping them get on with their lives. We call it Opportunities for Independence. One of the central pieces of that program is called the Adult Orientation and Adjustment Center. And this is a place where people come to learn how to adapt to vision loss. We have about a 10-minute video that I'd like to share with you because I think they can tell their stories better than I can tell them, of people who are going through the Orientation Center and the things that they're doing to learn to adapt to their vision loss. David Duffy, who just said that he was saving his own life, used to be a pharmacist, and now he's back in school learning a new profession. He's decided to go on and do something else. As I said, of some 69,000 Iowans experience vision loss, and it's not all total blindness. In fact, most people who have severe vision loss aren't totally blind. I am, but most aren't. Some have just the loss of that very central vision where which you need to read and to drive and to do fine, like thread a needle, that sort of thing. And some lose peripheral vision. It's different for each person. Blindness also doesn't strike just one kind of person or another. It's across society, and it's got nothing to do with social standards or standing. It's got nothing to do really with how smart you are or how good looking you are. It can happen. So you're going to see people who are rich. You're going to see people who are poor, well-educated and not so well-educated, old people, young people. In Iowa, the primary cause of blindness in older people is macular degeneration, which is an age-related disease. And for the working age people, the primary cause is actually diabetes. But no matter what the cause is, blind and visually impaired people all need to find different ways to do the things that they want to do. And that's what we do at the Iowa Department for the Blind, is teach those different ways of doing things. Now, there are many different ways of doing things that you all share. For example, how you got here tonight is some of you came in cars, some of you drove, some of you were passengers. Some of you may have come on the bus, some of you may have walked. It's a little nippy for a bicycle, but, you know, it doesn't matter how you came because you got here. And the fact that you're here is really all that matters. And that's kind of the same approach that we take. It doesn't matter how you do the thing, as long as it turns out the way you want it to. If I'm reading my notes in Braille and I'm still able to give my speech, it doesn't make any difference that it's Braille and not print. The speech is still being given. And that's the approach that we take. Our mission is to create opportunities for independence So it is the place where people with visual impairments come and develop skills. And we have a variety of programs to make that happen. And I'm going to just tell you a little bit about each of our programs, and then we're going to open this up for questions. We have a library. Reading is something that's very important to you all as university-associated people. Know how important reading is, and it really is very important. But if you can't read a print book, you've got to find an alternative. We provide that alternative. We have a library for the blind and physically handicapped, which provides material, books, magazines, personal materials, whatever people need, in recorded formats, in large print, and in Braille. We have a bunch of volunteers, I think probably about 100 all told, who help with the recording and the Brailing process, so that anything that anybody needs that isn't already available, we can do with our volunteers and our staff, so that everybody can have what they need. And that would include textbooks for college or textbooks for K through 12. It might also include the fine print in your insurance policy, if that was important for you to know. I haven't read mine, but some people do read that, I understand. We mail everything out through the mail, and we don't have to pay postage on it. Because of a federal law, and therefore we send things all over the state right to people's homes, so it's really very convenient that way. We also have an independent living program, and the goal of that program is to teach people who are in their homes and in their small community groups how to do these alternative things, how to thread a needle, how to set the stove, how to do those ordinary things that you do day in and day out that they need to find a different way of doing. It might be teaching them how to get around their town with using a long white cane. It might be how to make Braille labels and how to read the Braille. It might be any number of things. It's very personalized and adapted. Some of you may have grandparents, for example, who could benefit from that kind of thing, or older relatives of other connections. So our independent living teachers go out all over the state. We cover the whole state, and they travel to people in their homes. We also have a store right in Des Moines at our facility where we sell things that are useful to people with vision loss but that aren't very easy to find at the Walmart. We would sell a lot of different kinds of magnifiers, Braille and talking watches, large print playing cards and check writing guides, and some adapted games and other kinds of things like that. We have the Orientation Center, which you saw in the video. That's right downtown Des Moines, actually. And if you are in downtown Des Moines, you will see our students out walking around using their long white canes, wearing their sleep shades, and learning how to do that. Now, the sleep shades is something that people find a bit confusing. They say, well, if people have some vision left, why don't you be teaching them to use it? And the answer is very simple. If they have the sleep shades on, they have to focus on the non-visual techniques, and they will learn them. If they don't have them on, they will try to use the vision that they have, which is not any good, which is why they're there in the first place. So it's not that we don't want people to use the vision that they have, but we want them to concentrate on the non-visual techniques, because really what we're trying to teach people is the self-confidence that your vision does not define who you are or what you can do. And that's a very difficult lesson for people to learn, but it's the core of what we do. We also have a vending program. You will see vending machines in public buildings that are run by blind entrepreneurs. That's legislated through a program that we run. And we have a vocational rehabilitation program which works both with employers and with clients to match qualified people up with jobs and get blind people back to work, because we know that blind people can work in about any sector of Iowa's economy, and that blind people would way rather be working at a good job than sitting at home drawing Social Security. But it's kind of difficult to get those jobs, so our job is to help the employers find the right people and the people find the right jobs, and to get the training and the other things that they need in order to do that. And we believe that this pays back to the economy, so that we actually are pretty much a self-supporting program. If you are 25 years old, as some of our people are, and you lose your vision, let's say in an accident or something, you would stand to have about $1,000 in Social Security benefits per month till you're 65. That's money that the taxpayers pay. On the other hand, if you got a job paying $9.50 an hour, you would end up not getting that $1,000 a month, but you would be paying back in over that lifetime something around $150,000 in taxes. It costs us about $13,000 on average to actually do the work that we do with an individual. So you're looking at about a $667,000 difference in cost. I think I messed up my numbers, but it's close anyway. So the point is that it pays back to society what we do. And we are state funded and federally funded. So this is important for us to understand. Now, what kind of work do people do who are blind? Well, they do all kinds of work. They might work on assembly lines. They work in call centers, restaurants and grocery stores. Some work in high-end management positions, high-end technology project managers. Some teach. Some work in insurance, in technology, health, communications. Here's a list of jobs that blind people got just recently. Consumer loan underwriter, customer service representative, 2 of those. Daycare center director, director of patient support, dishwasher, food server, restaurant host, janitorial service manager, middle school teacher, packer, receptionist, recreation worker, maintenance director, special education teacher, store manager. You can see they're all across the spectrum, all different kinds of jobs. Over the past 50 years, we have actually helped thousands of people to gain their independence because we have helped to create the opportunities that they need and the training that they need so that they can actually just go back to work, get the jobs they want, and do the other things that make life worth living, raise families, work in their churches, their communities, work in their jobs, and take responsible roles in their families everywhere that they want to go. In closing, I'd like to ask you to do 3 things. I'd like to ask you first to put in a word for the Department for the Blind with your legislator. You know that we're in tough budget times, and our legislators need to know what programs out there are good, and I'd like to ask you, if you get the opportunity, just to mention that you heard about us and that you hear we do good work. We need all the support we can get in order to continue the work that we do. The second thing I'd like to ask you to do is to refer someone that you know. If you know somebody who could benefit from our services, an older person losing their vision to age-related things, a younger person, if you know anybody who could benefit from our services, let them know about us. Tell them to give us a call, or give us a call and give us the contact information. Or check our website. We have a website, www.idbonline.org. And check that out and see what's there, make some contacts. But refer the people that you know. We know there are 69,000 or so people out there, and we're not serving them all, and we would like to serve more. And the third thing I'd like to ask you to do is to help us create opportunities for employment. If you are involved in any way in a business, or if you run a business, or you have any kind of employment connections, think about hiring a blind person. What you're going to get traditionally and from hiring a person with a disability is a person who is going to stay in that job, who is going to work hard, and who is going to give the best that they can. Research has indicated that those things are what you will get from hiring a person with a disability. Low absenteeism, longevity on the job, high productivity, and high quality work. So think about that as you go forward in your lives. If you come across an opportunity to hire, consider hiring a blind person. At this point, we have about 15 minutes left, and I would like to open the floor up to questions. Anything's fair, so. I'm sorry, can you repeat? Yes. what we're doing with Braille these days is actually done on a computer. They type it in, and then there is computer software that translates it into Braille, and then we have high-speed embossers that work sort of the way that a printer works off of the computer, and it brailles the Braille out onto pages like this. And then the other volunteers that we have are people who record material that we put onto tape or digital files, and they record into a recorder. Mm-hmm. You call us up and you say, I'd be interested in volunteering to record for you guys. And we have a studio, a recording studio in our building, and we also have a home recording program where people have equipment that we provide in their homes, and they work there to do the recording, and we send the material out. There's an audition process, and we are always on the lookout for people who are good readers and can pass the audition process. We also look for people who may be more computer oriented and who might be interested in doing some of the perhaps less glamorous but equally important job of monitoring the recordings and doing that digital processing. So if that's something that's interesting, that's another thing that we're always looking for. I personally do have memories of seeing to the level. I don't have any memory of ever being able, for instance, to recognize faces. I don't know if I ever could, but I do have memories of seeing color, and I could see well enough to, when I was little, to read large print and to run and play and be relatively safe. So I do have those memories. One thing that's kind of interesting is that because I do have visual memory, I also have my visual, I tend to impose visual images on things that I think are there. So I'm looking out here and I'm seeing people sitting in chairs. I cannot see a thing, but that's what it's my brain is telling me. The primary ones that we have at this point are actually connected with our library. We do have some volunteers who come into the library and do some kind of manual things, rewinding cassette tapes and sorting things and shipping, that sort of thing. But beyond that, the recording and the brailing are probably the two main things that our volunteers do at this point. Mm-hmm. They come to Des Moines for the full-time training that you saw in the video in our orientation center. That's all done in Des Moines. But most of the people that we serve actually don't go through that training, and we serve them in their home communities. So we have vocational rehabilitation counselors who work in Sioux City and Cedar Rapids and all over the state. Some of them actually live in those areas and work there. Some of them travel out of Des Moines. Most of the people that we serve actually don't come to Des Moines, and we come to them. The independent living for the older people, we go to them as well. The library services are all done out of Des Moines, but people mostly just call up on the phone or email or order through the website, and then we ship things out. So most of them don't come to Des Moines either. We welcome everyone to come, but even our store is something that we do mostly by telephone. People call up and order stuff and then send in their checks. So even though we've only got the one center in Des Moines, we do serve the whole state. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have had deaf-blind people in the center, and one of the ways, of course, that it differs is that we have an interpreter who stays with them all during the training, so that they have obviously that access. There are other techniques that are used in travel, particularly so that a deaf-blind person can cross a street safely. This is not my area of expertise, but I know that one of the things, for instance, that they would do with a deaf-blind person is give them cards that they would be able to hold up to say, you know, I am deaf-blind, can you help me cross the street? Some things like that, because obviously when you are a blind person and you're crossing a street or traveling with a cane, you are using your hearing to tell what the cars are doing, where there are people, what that kind of thing, and so that some techniques have to be developed for deafblind people, because we know that deafblind people don't want to have to sit in their apartment all their times either, that they want to get out and move. So the cards is one way that is done. Mm-hmm. Certainly, they could come to Des Moines, but they don't have to. We'll go to them. Our professional staff, our teachers, and our counselors go all over the state. So we serve people all over the state. We have counselors making visits to homes and to work sites everywhere. We have 10 counselors, and their jobs are to go statewide, and we put a lot of miles on to do that. And our teachers, our independent living teachers, do the same thing. Because we know that a lot of people can't come into Des Moines. For one thing, you know, if you can't drive, it's hard to get to Des Moines. There's not much in public transportation these days. And we know that for most people, it's just not practical to come in. So even some of the people who live and work in Des Moines don't come into the building. We go to them. I depend on my dog to travel out. Mostly when I'm outside, I always use my dog instead of my cane. I live on a country road about 2 miles back from the highway, and most days I will walk that 2 miles, and I will use my dog, for example, for that. When I am traveling, and I travel quite a bit to different places for conferences and that sort of thing, I use him. We work through airports, we work through, you know, new hotels and that sort of thing. I use him for that kind of travel. The only time I really don't use him is when I am in a very confined situation, or for instance, I'm leaving him there to walk up here because it's easier actually, but if I'm walking out of this room, I'm going to take him with me. That's a personal preference. Most blind people really don't choose to use a dog. I have used a dog since I was 16, and it is something that I thought maybe I would give up at one point, and then I realized that was not, it just wasn't comfortable for me, that I really prefer to use a dog. I like the way that I move with a dog and some of the things that a dog can do smoothly that I'm used to, so. In school, in college? When I was an undergraduate student back in the 70s, early 70s, I did not have any services from the university itself. I had services from, I had money to pay readers is what I had. And so I was able, through my vocational rehabilitation program, I was able to pay readers, so I would just hire students who were in my dorm or whatever to do my reading for me. And that was before there was Kurzweil and before there was any of this other technology stuff. We didn't even have computers. I had to type all my stuff on a typewriter. My granddaughter saw my typewriter and wanted to know what it was. She had no idea. So there really weren't any, and I was very much on my own for for those for when I was an undergraduate student. One of the things that I ran into, I had to do all my own advocating, for example, and one of the things that I ran into was a biology instructor who was not going to allow me to take his test because he was quite sure that I couldn't, and I had to really argue with him to get him to even let me take the test. And then when I got an A on the test, he didn't have a whole lot more to say that day. But later, I wanted to take a biology degree, and the whole department, this was back in 1971, the whole department basically said, we could not put our reputation on the line by allowing you to be a graduate of our biology program, which was pretty awful. And I was 17, and I didn't advocate particularly well. At that point, I transferred schools, actually. That kind of thing I don't think would happen today, at least not that blatantly. But at that time, there was just really not much support for me. When I was a graduate student at Iowa State in 1990, I also, by then we had, I had a computer and I had a scanning software program. It's not as good as they are now, but it was pretty good. And so I didn't really avail myself of any of the student services at that time either, except to get some maps of the campus so I could figure out where I was going. But that was just partly my own style and my experience in the 70s of having done it on my own. I just didn't even think about getting help, so... Well, if we're out of questions, if you're here for a class requirement, look us up on the website and you get all the information you need to copy and paste into your paper. Thank you very much.